Imagine being born into one of the most powerful bloodlines on Earth. Your family name tied to palaces, crowns, and centuries of influence. Imagine knowing that your cousin would one day become the Queen of England, the most recognized woman on the planet. A life of privilege should have been guaranteed: protection, status, a place in history. But instead, you vanish. Not publicly, not dramatically, just quietly erased. Locked away behind cold institutional walls. Forgotten, hidden, and worst of all, declared dead while you were still breathing. This is not fiction. This is not a conspiracy theory pulled from the dark corners of the internet. This is a real story buried deep inside royal history. The story of Nerissa and Katherine Bowes-Lyon, cousins of Queen Elizabeth II, who were effectively erased from public existence to protect the image of the British monarchy. And once you hear what happened to them, you'll never look at the royal family the same way again. In 1963, anyone flipping through Burke's Peerage, the official record of Britain's aristocratic bloodlines, would find something seemingly ordinary. Two names, Nerissa Bowes-Lyon and Katherine Bowes-Lyon, listed simply, quietly, clinically, both recorded as deceased. Nerissa, dead in 1940. Katherine, dead in 1961. Case closed. For the public, the story ended there. Two unfortunate relatives who passed away young, nothing unusual, nothing suspicious. The monarchy moved forward with its carefully polished image: balcony waves, royal weddings, glamorous ceremonies, smiling portraits broadcast across the world. But the truth was far darker. Because when those death dates were printed into official records, the two women weren't dead. They were alive, breathing, aging, living in silence inside an institution called the Royal Earlswood Hospital, a psychiatric facility for people labeled at the time as mentally defective. They weren't buried underground. They were buried from history. The Bowes-Lyon family, the same family as Queen Elizabeth the Queen Mother, had quietly placed Nerissa and Katherine there decades earlier, in 1941. The diagnosis? Severe intellectual disability. In that era, this wasn't seen as a medical condition deserving support. It was seen as shame, a genetic imperfection, a threat to the image of aristocratic purity. And in royal circles, image was everything. The monarchy wasn't just a family, it was an institution, a symbol, a carefully constructed illusion of strength, stability, and perfection. Every detail mattered. Every scandal had to be contained, every weakness hidden. So two young women were removed from the narrative, locked away, and over time, forgotten. Years passed, decades even. Inside the hospital, life moved slowly. Cold corridors, routine schedules, fading memories. Outside, the world celebrated the royal family, the coronation of Queen Elizabeth II, the rise of modern monarchy, the glamorous wedding of Prince Charles and Princess Diana broadcast to millions. Inside Earlswood, the two women reportedly watched those moments on television, and according to nurses who worked there, something haunting would happen. Whenever the Queen or the Queen Mother appeared on screen, Nerissa and Katherine would stand. They would attempt a curtsy, awkward, unsteady, but unmistakably deliberate. They recognized them. They knew who they were. They understood that the people on that glowing screen were family. Family who never came to visit. No official records of royal visits, no birthday cards, no Christmas gifts, no acknowledgement, just silence. Imagine that for a moment. Watching your own blood relatives celebrated as icons of humanity while you sit in a room, forgotten, labeled, and hidden from the world like an embarrassing secret. And then came the moment the truth cracked open. British tabloids caught wind of something strange. Investigations led to a shocking revelation. Queen Elizabeth's cousins, believed to be dead for decades, were alive and living in a psychiatric hospital. The headline exploded across the country. The public reaction was immediate and furious. How could this happen? How could members of the royal family, a symbol of tradition and duty, allow their own relatives to be erased like this? But the most devastating detail came shortly after. Nerissa had died in 1986. Her grave? Unmarked by name, just a small plastic tag with a number. No royal crest, no dignified stone, no acknowledgement of her bloodline. A woman born into aristocracy, buried like an anonymous patient. The image shook the public to its core. And when Buckingham Palace was asked to respond, the statement was brief, controlled, detached. This, they said, was a matter for the Bowes-Lyon family, not the royal household. No apology, no emotional address, no deep explanation, just distance. The institution protected itself, just as it always had. Catherine, meanwhile, remained alive for decades after the scandal broke. She stayed in care for most of her life, eventually passing away in 2014 after spending more than half a century separated from the world her relatives ruled. 55 years. Think about that. While her cousin sat on the most famous throne on earth, Catherine lived behind institutional walls, largely invisible. And this is where the story becomes more complicated and more unsettling, because context matters. The early and mid-19th century was a time when mental disabilities were widely misunderstood. Families across all social classes, not just royalty, often institutionalized relatives. Society itself promoted separation instead of inclusion. Eugenics ideas influenced thinking across Europe. Perfection wasn't just preferred, it was expected. Was this cruelty or conformity to the norms of that era? Were the Bowes-Lyon family protecting their image or doing what society believed was best at the time? And where does the monarchy stand in all of this? Because the royal family has always operated under one unspoken rule: protect the crown at all costs. Scandals are managed, narratives are controlled, imperfections are hidden. From abdications to affairs, from controversies to tragedies, history shows a pattern. The institution survives first, individuals come second. And in this story, two women paid the price. Not with scandal, not with crime, but with silence. Erased from records, separated from family, declared dead while alive. It's the kind of story that feels almost impossible in the modern world, yet it happened within living memory. And it raises a chilling question. How many other stories like this were never discovered? How many secrets remain buried behind palace walls? The British monarchy thrives on symbolism, unity, tradition, stability. But beneath that polished surface lies a complex history, one shaped by power, reputation, and difficult choices. This story forces us to confront something uncomfortable. The crown is not just ceremony, it is control. And sometimes that control comes at a human cost. So what do we do with this truth now? Do we judge it through modern eyes and call it heartless? Or do we view it through the lens of history and accept that society itself failed people like Nerissa and Katherine long before the monarchy did? There is no easy answer, only a lingering discomfort. Because behind every royal portrait, every balcony wave, every glittering crown, there are stories we never hear. Stories of people who didn't fit the image, People who didn't make the headlines, people who were quietly removed so the fairy tale could continue. And maybe that's the most haunting part of all. Not that it happened, but that for decades, no one knew. So now, I want to hear from you. Were Nerissa and Katherine victims of a cruel system, or victims of a family protecting their legacy? Was this a tragedy shaped by its time, or a calculated act to preserve the illusion of royal perfection? Let me know what you think, because the history of the royal family isn't just about crowns and ceremonies. Sometimes it's about the people they left behind. And once you start digging into these stories, you realize the monarchy's darkest chapters aren't always written in scandal. Sometimes they're written in silence.